Okay, today's topic will be useful for people that are looking for new franchises, franchisors that are looking to find people to become franchisees for them. And it'll also be useful to people that are thinking of becoming a franchisee that have never become a franchisee, that never been in franchising before, or even never been in business before. So, and I'm gonna talk about it from the vantage point of should you become a franchisee and that whole process. So I'm going to start by saying that what when you acquire a franchise, you're not just buying something and driving out of a showroom with a car and no, you never see the salesperson again. This is about changing your life and spending many years together to be a franchisee. And so what when we look, and it's not about you picking us, it's you pick us and we pick you. It's a two-way street. I know in many franchise systems, if you just pay them a fee, they approve you. Well, in my franchise systems, I learned that when someone's not satisfied, when someone does poorly, they can either blame themselves or me. And guess who they always blame first? Me. So, and there's no joy in that. And um, it, we're just looking for the right people. So this is the question for you is, are you the right person? And this is how we determine it. I determine it. What I look for first, are you meant to be self-employed? In bringing in 5,200 franchisees in my career, I found that 20% of them should never have been self-employed. And in the United States, I think the latest statistics is about 2 out of every 3 people would like to own their own business. But what I found is only about 1 in 4 or 1 out of 5 can own their own business and do it well. So ways that we think about in determining whether you should be self-employed. One easy thing is if you've been self-employed before and successfully, then we know that you can do it. So we get over that hurdle pretty quickly if you've owned another business and done it successfully. If you haven't, then we look at other things. First of all, were either of your parents self-employed? Were your siblings self-employed? And those are good indicators. If it runs in the family, then it's like you experience firsthand. You may have been at work for your parents in their self-employment in their company. So those are good determinators. If not, then we're blind. We're going in blind, and so we look for things like risk taking, risk and leadership skills, and whether you're driven. Because let's talk about driven first. There's no one when you're self-employed. There's no one there to light a fire under you and say you need to be at work at 8 o'clock on Monday morning, and you need to stay until 6 p.m. or 9 p.m. or whatever. There's no one that you're responsible to but yourself. And of course, my favorite 10 two-letter words apply when you go into business for yourself. If it is to be, it is up to me. And many people that acquire a franchise, or they look for excuses, they look to other people. But it boils all down to you got to look in the mirror and say the buck stops here. So you have to be driven and have a reasonably challenging goal. You have to be able to set a challenging goal and set out in that direction, and then you have to have the person. Number one category, of course, we talked about. Number one skill is you have to have perseverance. There's always going to be adversity, and there isn't a day that goes by. My companies have been so big with thousands of employees and thousands of franchisees and offices that isn't a day goes by that there isn't some challenge, and it can come in any of numerous ways. And on these webinars, I've listed many of the challenges that I've faced over the years, but you are guaranteed to face challenge. So that is, now, are you driven enough to overcome those challenges? And are you risk? Are you willing to take the risk and the challenge, knowing that you're going to face those challenges? Are you risk adverse? Some people just want to have a calm, peaceful life. I don't want to be bothered. I just want to work 9 to 5, whatever. That's not the kind of person that is meant to be self-employed. Self-employment is mentally a 24-hour a job day. I mean, it's hard to go an hour when you're self-employed. I don't think I've gone too many hours where, even in my dreams, where I'm not thinking about business. So, or I'm not dreaming about business. So it's all in. You have to be capable of being all in. If you're not going to be all in, if you're not going to be 100% committed, then this isn't for you. You know, a lot of people, and as a little adjunct to that, I have a different theory than the rest of the world on the phrase "skin in the game." And the phrase "skin in the game" means money, means to everyone. They have to have some dollars. They have to commit some dollars to the business. Well, in bringing in thousands of franchisees, I've learned a different lesson, that skin in the game to me doesn't mean money. What it means is that you're mentally all in, that you're 100% committed, that you're do or die, that you're going to see it to the finish. And it's like in poker, that phrase "all in" has been really made famous over the last 10 or 15 years, and when poker has risen to such popularity. But you invest everything, and that means you have skin in the game. It doesn't matter how much money you invest. If your net worth is $100,000 and you invest $25,000, that may be better than if you're worth $10 million and invest $250,000. If you're a 10 millionaire and you lose $250,000, it's really, well, it's painful. It isn't life changing. But if you have 100,000 and lose $25,000, it may be a huge setback. And so it's not the amount of money. I've seen multimillionaires lose hundreds of thousands of dollars and not bat an eye. I've seen other people that have lost money that with far less investment, and it really was hurtful to them. And I've even seen people go bankrupt. And we'll get into that later on about who goes bankrupt and who's a massive success and who goes bankrupt later in this conversation. But the key is, are you too risk averse to acquire a franchise? And we've already talked about how much you're driven. Another thing that's important is leadership skills, because you shouldn't be a franchisee or even possibly a business owner if you're going to sit and do all the work. If you're just buying a job. There are many franchise systems I've seen where, including tax preparers, some people just want to prepare taxes. And so they acquire a tax franchise and they sit there in the office doing tax returns. Some people acquire a Subway and they're in the store every day, working 60 hours a week, making subs and doing the things that other people can do at minimal wages. And this isn't owning a business, isn't owning a job. Well, I mean, what are you thinking? And I tell people, if you just want to be a tax preparer, then work for me. I'll give you I will pay you well to work for me. We need tax preparers. In a way, it's not good that 80 or 90% of the country is our employees. But I wouldn't achieve anything if if I hadn't had great employees. So it's good that there are people that just should be employees that don't have the leadership skills, the drive, or the risk taking to become self-employed. So the leadership skills are important because in order to have a excellent business, you're going to have to get people to follow you. And I'm not just talking about employees, but I'm talking about vendors, customers, investors. There's the world around you is going to have to, you're going to have to convince them that you have something good going on, or you're not going to have something good going on. So we look in people's past to see, when I try to judge whether you're or you should be self-employed, then I look at your past, even as a child. I mean, were you a coach, or were you a captain of in middle school or high school or even elementary school? Were you captain of a team? Were you president of an organization? Were you did you have people that when you're in a group, are you one of the followers or are you one of the leaders? Are you one of the influencers or one of the influenced? And so those are the kind of things we have to make sure of before you even go. Next step is to what kind of industry. So we will take our people, as when we're evaluating a franchise candidate, and we get historically about 20,000 inquiries a year. So and 70 or 80% of them are just tire kickers or made a mistake calling, but we're still talking to 6 or 8,000 people. And when we talk to you, what our first thing we're looking for is to find out answer that question. Are you meant to be self-employed? If the answer is yes, the second step is, what industry should you be in? And I can't emphasize enough that our mission statement, having fun, improving lives. Having fun is so important. Life is so short. And if on Monday morning you're going into work and you're not looking forward to it, you're going to the wrong place, or you're in the wrong position that place. So you need to make a change if you're going to enjoy life. It's not, with me, it's thank God it's Monday. And if you are living a life of thank God it's Friday, you're not meant to be you're either, if you're not self-employed, you're not meant to be self-employed, and because you're in the wrong place. Or if you are, if it is thank God it's Monday, that's the kind of industry you want to be in. So one thing about Zoom and Grumman, for example, at Zoom and Grumman, we're up to about 140 vans and adding 10 or 15 a month. And out of our 100, well over 100 franchisees already in less than 3 years, we've done about 70 new franchises this year alone already by June. And but I don't know of more than 3 of them that are groomers. They're certainly not 5 are groomers, because you don't want, again, as I said before, you don't want someone that works in the business. You want to have someone that works on the business. Michael Gerber invented that phrase 4 decades ago. And in the book called, I'd recommend E-Myth, E-Myth, M-Y-T-H. Unfortunately, he wrote a updated version of E-Myth, and he changed it to E-Myth Revisited. And I don't like the changes. Before the E-Myth, he made changes in what he thought were improvements. I disagreed with the improvements. So before that, I had bought thousands of copies of E-Myth and distributed one to every one of my franchisees. We had at Jackson, Hewitt, and Liberty, we had we brought in 5,000 franchises. So I distributed one of those books to everyone. Well, in as soon as he published the E-Myth, he stopped publishing the, or as soon as he published E-Myth Revisited, he stopped publishing E-Myth, and we even called them up, and there was a Gerber Enterprise. I think he's died over the last decade, but there was a Gerber Enterprise, and we called them up and said, can we buy reprints of E-Myth? And they wouldn't do it for us. So those are hard to get, but still the E-Myth is valuable. It just isn't quite as valuable. The E-Myth Revisited is useful, and it will help you understand why you shouldn't be working as a taxpayer, as a groomer, that someone has to be CEO of your company. But again, you have to find the right industry, and it has to be something I suggest that it has to be something that you love to do. If you're like me and I took an H&R Block tax course, I loved it, and that was I was blessed at 20 years old to find out what I wanted to be the rest of my life. And some of I think out of all of our franchisees in Zoom and Grimman, I'm pretty sure they all own dogs, and so they're pet lovers, and so pet businesses are for pet lovers typically. And if you don't enjoy pets, then what are you doing? So everyone has different passions, and God makes everyone different. We have different passions, different interests. Pick something that you enjoy, not something that you think is economically the best way to go. If you have a choice between economics and joy, pick joy, and find a place that you can exercise your joy in business at the same time. So in Yale did it was either Yale or Princeton 70 years ago. They looked at their graduates. They had about 100 seniors, and 25 years later, they went back and analyzed the success of the graduates of whatever it was, 1955, say. And 25 years later, we get to 1980, and they did a survey of all the graduates. What did you do after graduation? Did you go get a job right away, or did you go on vacation, or did you go into self-employment? I mean, what did you do? And about 75% of them, between 75 and 80% of them, had gone and got a job. And 25 years later, the wealth of the 20 or 25 that had gone out and just tried to find what they loved to do, and then did that, versus the other 75 to 80 that went and got a job, the 20 to 25 were wealthier than the 75 to 80 combined. And it's because it's such a great advantage to be in something that you love to do. It's not work. When in my career, I essentially don't work because I love every day, because I love the industry I'm in and I don't need to get in all those reasons. But what I tell people is, and we make this opportunity available to our potential franchisees, is if you have any question whether this would be something you like to do, then come and work for us. You could work for us on weekends or evenings, or come and work for us or one of our franchisees and see if this is something you love to do. Again, life's too short. Find something you love to do, work hard, persevere. So number one is, should you be self-employed? Number two is, okay, pick the industry. And that should be, for most people, that's pretty easy to do. That I hate math, so I'm not going to be an accountant or a tax preparer, or I need to work outside. So you look for industries where you can work outside, and you have to think about your own drive, your own interest, before you pick the right industry. So in the process of looking and helping people, our job is to find out what's best for you. And if at some point the answer is no to any of these, that no, you shouldn't be self-employed, then we'll tell you, go away. I mean, we don't think that's right for you. If one of our brands isn't the right industry, you should go find something that you enjoy. So our job is to find what's best for you. So now we have the person, we've made it through those process, we weeded out. So we start with 6,000 or 8,000 people. By the time we're down to should you be self-employed and what industry, now we're down to less than half of that. And so let's say we're down to 3,000 out of our 20,000 inquiries. Now, is this the right vehicle for you? And virtually almost everyone at least considers, and their friends, by the way, who aren't, and usually their friends are not business people that are telling them this. But I've heard so many people over the years ask about, why should I do this? Why should I join you? Versus why shouldn't I do it myself? It seems like it's so much cheaper to do it myself. What do I need you for? And so that's the question that we need to look at with a prospect. Number one is should you do it on your own? Number two, should you join our company? And in all of our companies, we have competitors. Should you join one of them? So you really have to make a choice. Is, do you want to be self-employed? Or I'm sorry, do you want to be a non-franchise independent mom and pop? Or do you want to acquire a franchise? Then if you decide you want to acquire a franchise, why us versus your competitors? So we take people through that process. And I'm not going to spend a long time on I'll give you some tidbits or some nuggets on why you should be with us versus doing it yourself. But on my next webinar, and it's actually, we're skipping July 4th. It'll be July 11th. I'm going to spend the whole hour on why you should be a franchisee of ours versus independent, and why, if you are an independent, why you should convert your business, why you should consider converting your business to, for example, if you have a tax preparation business and you're a mom at one of the 250,000 mom and pops, why you should consider changing and acquiring a franchise of our tax, A-Tax. We have two tax divisions. One is A-Tax and the other is ledgers. And I'm going to explain that in depth in 2 weeks. And so, of course, you can listen in live or you can always get the recorded version. So since I'm going to do that, I'm not going to spend too much time on it today, but let me give you some thoughts to think about that with just a short list. And name brands in this country are so valuable. And I don't go into grocery stores, but I imagine walking down the aisle in a grocery store, they are Pepsi, Coke, and generic cola. My thought is that the generic cola is maybe only 50% of the price. Well, what do you think sells more? Pepsi, Coke, or generic cola? Pepsi and Coke sell 10, 20 times as much as, even though the generic cola is cheaper, they have that competitive advantage. People go for the brand names, and they're in every industry. The brand name is number one. Brand name is not the cheapest alternative. So people, you either have to win or price or service or price or name, and the national brand names get to charge more. So if you go into an H&R Block or an A-Tax, a Jackson Hewitt, you're going to pay more than if you go into a mom and pop. But it's just the way Americans think, and that's why a McDonald's is worth far more than if I was going to get in the hamburger business, would I want a McDonald's or John's hamburger? I mean, McDonald's does not have any. They don't have the best tasting burger. I mean, my grandchildren could, or my great grandchild's about 6, so he might be able to go and make a better hamburger. That certainly by the time they're 10 or 11, they can go to the grocery store, pick up some hamburger and some buns, some condiments, and make a quality burger as well as McDonald's. But McDonald's sells more than anyone. They have a 25%. Last time I checked, they had a 25% market share of all the fast food burgers chains in the country, and mom and pops, of all the burgers sold, that McDonald's has 25%. Why? They're not the best tasting. They're not the cheapest. They have a system of doing business. The number one thing you get when you acquire a great franchise, and got to be careful, only 20% of franchisors are great. So I'm not saying any franchise, but 80 the quality franchise, the like the ATAX, the H&R Block, the Liberty, Jackson Hewitt, they have a system of doing business that, and brand name, that set them apart. One thing about, before I get to system more, another thing about brand name is when a mom and pop, when they do a tax return at a mom and pop at John's Tax Service, and here in Virginia Beach, let's say John's Tax Service had one location. Well, if they move from Virginia Beach to Suffolk, an hour away, they're probably going to change tax preparer. If they move to Maryland or New York or California, they're almost certainly going to change tax preparer. And so the mom and pop has lost that business. Now, if you're a brand name, then they're looking for that brand name. When we have Zoom and Grumman customers in Virginia Beach, we have my Memphis franchise owner of Zoom and Grumman said 2 customers who were happy with Zoom and Grumman in Virginia Beach came in and had their dogs groomed in Memphis, Tennessee. So you get all those referrals, and I don't know how it is in every industry, but my specialty is tax. I know this, that 1 out of 7 of every tax returns for H&R Block, the largest in the industry. I mean, H&R Block has 9,000. Jackson Hewitt just has 6,000. But 1 out of every 7 customers change offices. So you don't, if you're a mom and pop, you don't realize that when you're losing customers, you're losing them often because they move. They move out of the area, not because you offer bad service, but Americans move on average every 3 or 4 years. And if they move far, then you're out of the Zoom and Grumman area. If they move out of Virginia Beach to Richmond, 90 miles away, you've lost them. But if there's a handful of Zoom and Grumman franchisee vans up in Richmond, and they can handle that business, and they get that business. So in addition to customers, by being national, you get employees. We started on August 18th of 2021. We had opened our first franchise since we acquired Zoom and Grumman here in Virginia Beach. Well, that groomer just recently moved, and I think it was Connecticut, and is now grooming up in Connecticut because she wanted to work she's familiar with Zoom and Grumman, and so she was happy. So you get employees. So you get employees, customers. It's just having a national brand. And having a national brand, your business is worth more. So you can get higher prices for when you sell the business, and higher prices from customers. People, as I said, with Pepsi and Coke, customers are willing to pay extra for brand names. Somehow we put extra value as Americans into brand name. When you want to sell your business and exit your business, your succession plan is much stronger if you're a brand name. Because if you're selling a business called ATAX or H&R Block or Jackson Hewitt, people know the name and they know what it's worth. And other franchisees nearby are your most likely buyer. The most people that start in this industry, at least 3/4 are of the people that I brought in over the years want more than one office. And it's so much easier to grow instead of starting a second one from scratch. Oh, I can acquire that. My next door neighbor, when they retire, I can acquire their location. Or so the number one buyer is other franchisees in the system. But in the system, we have thousands of tax preparers. And some of them want to step up and own the business, own a tax or Zoom agreement. And so they probably 10% of the sales are done to a tax preparer if it's a tax business. I've seen in my career, 10% of them they could be a taxpayer inside our system or even from outside the system. They know tax preparation, they know us. But so those are some of the value. The key thing though is the system. That's the number one thing. It's the system of operations, because we've made every mistake or seen every mistake that you could possibly make. And when you think about, and taxes is my forte, so when you think about opening a tax business from scratch, I mean, how much are you going to charge the customer? What kind of software should you use? What kind of advertising should you do? And let's say you pick to advertise on the radio. What kind of station should you advertise on? And what kind of timing? And we know, and we've learned over the years, that if you're a certain age, then this is the window that you tend to file in. If you have a certain income level, this is the window that you file in. And if you have so for example, early filers tend to be lower income, and the higher income customers tend to have more complex returns, and they wait for March and April. So if you're looking for early season customers with a take-home pay of $300 or $400 a week versus a take-home pay of thousands of dollars a week, then you think about the radio station you want to be on in January and February, and the message you want to convey. Those people, the number one service they want is, I want my refund and I want it yesterday. I've already spent it mentally. So how fast can I get my refund? So that's the message. We know exactly what days to run the ads, what stations to run on, and what the message should be. And it's a totally different station and message in January and February than it is in March and April. And we know the timing of, for example, in that 50% of Americans don't file their tax returns until after April, or until after March 31st. And so why would you spend 90% of your advertising dollars before April when 50% of the people are making their decision on where they're going to file? How many people do you think on June 27th are thinking, where am I going to file my tax return next year? I need to go to a tax preparer. I'm not happy with mine, or I've moved, and where do I go next year to have my no one's, not one human being in the United States thinking about that. But they're going to think about it in April when they're going to file on April 10th or 12th or 14th. They're going to start thinking about it in April. That's the time your ad has to hit them, and it has to be the right message. So the message early in the year is speed of refund. The message in March and April is thorough. We dig for deductions. We give advice. We're the experts, and those kind of, so that message is given at a certain radio station. In the same way, if you're going to advertise online, I mean, are you on Google? Are you on LinkedIn? And where are you advertising? And what time of year are you advertising, and what's the message that you're advertising? So when you acquire a franchise, you get all those answers right off at day one. We for example, in ATAX, give you, this is what you should be doing every week during the season. We even supplement it with, and I don't know any other franchisor that does this, we we're calling you twice a week, and every week in January, February, March, and saying, this is what you should be focused on this week, and giving you complete guidance as to what to be doing. Otherwise, how do you know? And in seasonal businesses, it's so hard to get experience, because in tax, for example, people think of it as 15 weeks, but there's only 4 weeks that we're really, really busy. We do more than half our revenue in 4 weeks. So you got to get those weeks exactly right, or it's wait until next year. Once a person has filed their tax return, they're only going to do that once a year. So you've lost them for 12 months. So if you have one day wrong, you advertise one day too late, one day too early. If you're one day off, you're going to lose them for a whole year. So the mistakes you can make are incredible amount of mistakes. We've either made them or see them, and that's what you get. You get the expert direction of avoiding all the mistakes. And they say people that are most successful have made the most mistakes, and I agree that. So since I've founded 2 companies of over 10,000 offices. I'm incredibly successful, $1.5 billion value. I made the most mistakes, and you get to learn from them. You don't have to make those same mistakes over again. You don't have to advertise on the wrong radio station, on the wrong vehicle online, on the wrong sign in the window, on having the wrong hours in your operation. All of that, you don't have to think about that. You don't have to think about where do I open? What should my location look like? How much rent can I afford? What kind of sign should I get? All those are solved for you. Here's the recipe. Follow the recipe. And how much should I pay my preparer? And should I give them a bonus? Should I have them sign a non-compete? All of those questions are answered. So that's what you get when you get a franchise. And again, I'm going to go for an hour on that in 2 weeks, so I won't beat that to death. But there are over 30 advantages to being part of a franchise system, to then being being on your own. And I'll go through that in depth in 2 weeks. So once you decide you should be a franchise, okay, then yes, I want to be a franchise. Then you have to say, well, there's in our industry, there's H&R Block, there's Jackson Hewitt, there's Liberty, and now there's ATAX. And which one should I join? Well, I love to tell people that you can't make the mistake of joining H&R Block because they've been sold out for 30 years. So you can't even make that mistake. And most of the country's sold out for Jackson Hewitt. And even if they're not, for example, in the Virginia Beach market, there are 50 territories, 50 possible office locations. And that means there's 50 H&R Blocks. Because essentially we want to go head to head. We want to have one ATAX for every H&R Block. Well, 48 of those are owned. And at ATAX or Liberty, 48 or 49 or 50 of them are owned. If you made the mistake of choosing them, you would pick a low quality territory, because territories range from excellent, extraordinary, down to below average, down to maybe just barely workable. So if you join those other companies, you're going to get the leftovers. They've already picked in any city. So that's one. I mean, there's disadvantages by being on the ground floor, but there's a huge advantage that the territory that are available are far better. Would you rather compete against a McDonald's that was doing $5 million a year, or a McDonald's that was doing $2.5 million a year? Well, of course, that shows you the opportunity is twice as much in the McDonald's that's doing $5 million versus $2.5 million. And again, would you rather be in an area where the H&R Block is doing $900,000 of revenue, or where it's doing $300,000 of revenue? There are those ranges in most large metropolitan areas. And there could be as low as $150,000 or $200,000. So they range up to $150,000 to $200,000 at the low end, up to $1 million at the high end. Where do you want to be? Well, that shows you where the customers are. The reason that they're all run by the same, they're company-owned locations that are run by one guy. So it's not different management, but it's just that there are more of our customers in the areas that do better. So the so in our industry, in the tax industry, that it's a clear differentiator that, and you have to have differentiators. That's what you look for in comparing against other franchises. Or what is their differentiator? What sets them apart? Because if David had gone on the field with the same sword and shield and armor as Goliath, there wouldn't be a David and Goliath story. He'd be the 889th guy killed by Goliath. So you have to have differentiators. And one of them is you can get the greatest territory if in most cities. The only cities that are about sold out are Bronx and Queens, and Denver is getting really sold out. So, but the rest of the country is wide open for great areas and great territories. We're very young in our development at ATEX. So, but you have to have differentiate. What sets you apart from your competitors? And it's not everyone's going to say. If you ask the CEO of H&R Block who offered the better service, he would say H&R Block. If you offered the CEO of Jackson Hewitt who offers the best service, he would say Jackson Hewitt. If you offered Liberty, who offers the best service, they would say Liberty. But they're all wrong. And so we don't, at ATEX, we don't say we offer the best service. We do offer it, and we have objective things that we do better. For example, during those 4 busy weeks I talked about earlier, they talked about what do you do different during those weeks? And to me, there are lots of seasonal industry. There's in Virginia Beach, with the ocean and the weather, we have this 6 months of great peak. I mean, there's really 3 months of peak, but 6 months of good season where we're busy with tourists, and we do things different in July and August than they do in January and February, as you can imagine. So in July and August, they offer more services. They're open longer hours in their restaurants. They have beach guides and parties and bands and expanded hours. They do a lot of things different in July and August than they do in January, where they don't have any of that. It's like a ghost town in July and August on the ocean front. I mean, you can go to the I think the largest hotel in the ocean front, the Hilton. Let's say it has 500 rooms. I mean, you won't get 20% occupancy on January 15th, but on July 15th, there'll be 100% occupancy. So your fees are higher in July and August than they were, and you get a huge discount in January and February. So what do we do different? Well, and unlike our competitors, unlike our 3 larger competitors, we expand our hours. All of the major competitors are open during the tax season. If we just look at Monday through Friday, all of them are open. Their standard hours of 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I so much love driving by an H&R Block at 8:45 in the morning and seeing customers standing outside, and the preparers are sitting inside with the lights on. They're playing on their computer. And the poor customers, especially in the cold weather, if you're in New York or Maine or Minnesota, and Michigan, and they're out in the cold, and they're like a bank. They won't open until 9 o'clock. Well, what would you do? You own your business. You're a franchisee. Well, you're going to open your hours. So during those 4 weeks where we do well over 50% of our business, we expand our hours till 7 a.m. And then at 5 after 9, there's a knock on the door at an H&R Block office, and they lock the door at 9 p.m. and they don't even get out of their seat generally. They wave, come back tomorrow, come back tomorrow. Well, what would you do? You go grab that customer. That's your lifeline. Customers are everything. They're not just important, they're everything. It's do or die, win or lose. And so we expand our hours. During those 4 weeks, we expand our hours from 7 a.m. until the last customer leaves. We don't lock the door until the last customer leaves. And so that's a differentiator. That sets us apart from our competitors. And you have to do things different, or how are you going to attract business? And there are 18 objective things we do better than everyone else in the industry. 18 items. And that would take me, again, half an hour to explain to you. I'm not going to tell those because you may not be in the slightest interest in the tax preparation industry. But the key is you have to have things that set you apart. Now, so what is it that drives the customer to H&R Block? What is it that drives the customer to Jackson Hewitt, to Liberty, to ATEC? What are those drivers? And what I've always been able to accomplish is the lowest cost per new customer acquisition. So my brands have the lowest cost with our marketing and our system and our differentiators in each brand. We have the lowest cost to acquire a customer. We're the experts at acquiring new customers. And of course, it's up to our franchisees to provide the superior service that keeps our customers returning and gets them referring. You know, it's your job as a groomer. Your number one job isn't to groom that dog. I mean, that's part of your job, but the most important thing is getting retention and referrals. Not, I mean, and part of that, you're not going to get retention and referrals if you don't do a good job grooming. But you can't, you have to focus on what's the most important. The most important thing is getting retention and getting referrals. And so that's, you have to have differentiators. And when you look for the right franchisor and right system, you have to ensure that they have differentiators they're going to be picked by a customer and their costs are lower than their competitors. That's a huge advantage. The final thing you look for is when you think about being self-employed and we think about acquiring a franchise, is this the right time? And I'll tell you some things that are clearly not the right time. What we found resistance in when we see that it's not the right time is that, for example, they're going to move. They're going to move in 3 months or 6 months or 12 months or 20. I mean, they're clearly going to move. They decided that after their child graduates high school in 18 months, they're going to move from Boston to Miami. Well, you can't start. You don't almost never want to start a business in Boston if you're going to be in Miami in 18 months. So it's the wrong time. Or they lost their job, or one of the spouses becomes ill. Even if it's not you, the one that's interested in being in business, your other spouse becomes diagnosed with heaven forbid, diagnosed with cancer or some critical disease. Or oftentimes their parents take a step for the worse, and they're spending an inordinate amount of time in their life now caring for the parent. So they don't have time to care for the parent and to start a new job. Sometimes just you're moving, and it may be you're in the midst of a move. We have one franchisee I'm not sure where they're moving from, but I know they're moving to Jacksonville, Florida, and they're going to become a Zoom and Grooming franchise. And they just sold their house this week within the last 7 days. And now they're going to wait until July or August to come in and open their Zoom and Grooming franchise in Jacksonville. So that moving is disruptive. So even if all of the other three characteristics are true, it could be the wrong time. And oftentimes it happens in the process. It generally takes 3 months from the time someone first inquires until they're ready to open their doors. And stuff happens during those 3 months. So even if it's the right time. I'm talking to you on today, on June 27th, something could happen between now and September when you're set to open. And so it has to be the right time in their life. And I've had people come back. We sent a postcard recently out to it was existing tax businesses, and one of the guys was so excited. He had come to see me at Liberty Tax. I believe it was in 2005. And he walked away, and it just wasn't the right timing for him. And now he got a postcard about ATAX with my picture on it. And he said, oops, wow, this is perfect timing now, perfect time. And so he's excited, and he's looks like he's going to acquire about 10 different territories in his city. And it was just the right time. And so you always want to, when you're acquiring a new franchise, or you're a franchisor trying to acquire new franchises, you always want to leave the door open and leave a good taste in their mouth that each year. And out of the 5,200 franchisees come in, I would bet at least 10% of them didn't come in until the next year, 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 20 years later that they'll contact you. So just if you do right by people, then and they'll always be thinking about it, and when the time is right. And we reach out about once a year to all the people in our database. Just a little jog. Are you interested? Are you interested? Just to remind them, if it really was a timing instance that, oh, maybe this is the right time. So I want to finish up with the question in the queue is what's the right amount of experience to have to acquire a franchise, or just to acquire a franchise? And what I've learned in my 55 years and I look at all the thousands of successful and all the 1,000 that failed. So there's 4,000 of them succeeded and 1,000 of them failed. And I also look at their performance. Who are the greats and who are the average and who are the failures? And I looked at their experience, their education, and their intelligence. For example, in tax, where I brought in 5,000 franchises, and 2,500 of them had experience, and 2,500 of them had no experience, zero. Well, guess who did better, the experienced or the non-experienced? You're right. It's the people without experience, because they have no bad habits. Experience can be useful if you're willing to improve. If you're not willing to improve, if you're going to do the same old thing, then you don't want to be part of a franchise system. You have to be committed to change. I mean, improvement requires change. So you need to be able to change and improve. And that is so much more important than experience. You don't need experience because you don't know better than us. I've been doing this for 55 years. I'm the great granddaddy of tax. No one has ever built more tax offices than me, or knows how to build tax offices. And I knew in 1969, and I know in 2024 I know now how to build tax businesses better than any human being that ever existed. So you don't need experience if it's going to hold you back. Most people, oh, that's not the way I do it. That's not the way I do it. So experience can be very valuable, but oftentimes it's a detriment if you're not committed to improve. The only use of experience is, yes, I'm willing to improve, and then experience pays off. But most people aren't willing to do that. Thank you, everyone, and I'll talk to you in 2 weeks. And remember, I'm going to talk about why you should be in a franchise system, even if you have your own book of business, even if you're a mom and pop, why you should think about converting to a franchise system. Thank you. We will talk to you next week.